Okay, I'm here today with Sophia Bovi, who has been taking my course this semester in peace psychology at the University of Rhode Island. And we're just about finished with the course. Uh, Everything's coming to an end in a few days. So during the course, Sophia's done a good job of keeping up with the reading that I've uh, loaded onto all the students, and she wrote a paper that thought was particularly good for summarizing and commenting on the module that's really the heart of the course. That's a module on the psychology of nonviolence. Um, so, Sophia, I wanted to ask you what it was like for you to encounter this material, especially because you're an education major and one of your minors is psychology.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm very interested in your perspective on encountering this material in the course.
Um, I'm going to be honest, when I took this class or when I signed up to take it, I wasn't sold on like nonviolence, you know, being the answer and, is war the right thing and stuff like that. But I think when I was reading these readings, um, it really changed my perspective. What I really couldn't believe is that most of it is through our communication, and especially working with kids and being in the classroom. um Most of what we teach them is how you treat your peers and treating people with respect and such like that, but it's not. I feel like in schools it needs to be brought more about. I was learning about what was it, compromising, and with the way you talk to people and just how you associate yourself. Well, that's the core part of nonviolence. And I feel like with what these kids are surrounded with nowadays, especially with like social media and all of the technology, um when I was reading that, I was like, I wanted to incorporate that in the classroom, and I wanted them to understand that it is important, because I feel like they're exposed to so much violence online. But I just really couldn't believe how much we experience kind of nonviolence in our day to day with problem solving and problems that I might have with my friends or family, and how working through those is also expressing nonviolence.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of students are surprised at how relatable it
Hmm.
is, and
Yes.
I don't really tell them that it's relatable to their own life, but they seem to recognize that
Yes.
and take it away with them. Um, Yeah, you mentioned communication and you mentioned the importance of respect. I mean,
Yes.
now it is possible to learn good communication skills, but then to use them for evil,
Mhm. Yes.
to manipulate people and to know how to push people's buttons. But in nonviolence, the emphasis really is more on respect, as you noted. Um, um, so you've gotten something new that apparently wasn't part of your
Mhm.
education before. I wonder if
Yes.
you could say something about sort of the whole trajectory of your education that you're a senior. You're
Yes.
at the end of your college career now. So it's a it's a time maybe to look all the way back and see where this material about the psychology of violence and nonviolence fits in for you.
Um, it's crazy to say that I'm thinking back to high school and middle school and elementary school. And I really remember learning about Martin Luther King, probably in elementary school and maybe middle school, and touching on it more. But throughout high school, I learned nothing about nonviolence. I didn't even associate until taking this that Martin Luther King, Gandhi, and Jim Lawson, what they were doing was nonviolence and quite literally showing how it works and how it's beneficial. I don't understand why I'm learning up in high school all about wars and what happened. Granted, it's obviously important for our revolution of this country, but why are we not learning about the importance of nonviolence and how we can be preventative for things in the future? I just, I was reading this and I was like, I feel like I only touched on Martin Luther King for his I Have a Dream speech and kind of obviously him making his mark and being very progressive, but the letter from Birmingham, I hadn't read that before. Um, I feel like I was so sheltered from so much from so many men that had been so progressive with nonviolence that I don't I it was mind blowing to me that I hadn't been taught this before.
Yeah, and you're expressing something that I've heard from many students
Mhm.
who sort of feel like a secret has been kept from them or
Yeah.
something, which in some sense, I think is true. I mean, the uh, Martin Luther King's book, Stride Toward Freedom, uh, which we mentioned a few times. It's mentioned in some of our readings. Um, that went out of print in the United States, which
Wow.
is amazing to me. You know,
Yes.
that book was never adopted in schools. And I think if it had been, who knows what impact it might have had on several generations of students.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
but I think you're giving a picture of the impact that it can have to learn about uh, violence and nonviolence
Mhm.
through a psychological lens, which is sort
Yeah.
of how the concept of the course. And I think in your writing, you've done a great job, and you're doing a great job here to
Thank
just
you.
put that in front of people. So thanks a lot for helping me with this, Sophia.
No problem.
Um, is there anything else you'd like to add to the discussion?
Um, I think what was also really moving throughout this, I know I mentioned in my paper about Christianity. Um, I something that will stick out to me when I was reading the motorcycle story. I really loved that, and I feel like, especially being in schools, they're trying to. Obviously, we need to be more inclusive with everybody's religion, but they're trying to push Christianity out of schools. And I feel like Christianity for so long has been getting this bad rap of I mentioned in my paper, or there was a student in your book that did that reflection paper on something they had
Yes.
read. And it was when people in the South who were against Black people and racially profiling them, they were claiming to be these Christians and go to church every Sunday, but that's not what Christianity is about. And in the motorcycle story, you can see that being true to who you are and going against what the norm may be or what other people are doing and sticking to knowing what's right, no matter if you're going to get scrutinized for it, is what Jesus did. And that's what Christ did. And I loved how the philosophies of MLK and Jim Lawson connected with that because it really shined a positive light on no, this is what Christianity really is. It's not anything else. It's being kind and being loving and being accepting, and that's what it's really about. And connecting that to schools, it's sad to see it getting pushed out. And I feel like we need to be embracing that and accepting of everybody, and that goes with it. And I was reading that and I was getting fired up. I was like, it really touched me, and I was happy to be able to write about that and that your student wrote that and you mentioned that in your book, and I just really loved that.
Yeah, I think most of my students have some exposure to Christian education early on. And we've had a lot of students who don't, who have grown up
Mhm.
in another tradition, Muslim or Buddhist or Hindu or whatever. And it's remarkable that you can find nonviolence in all of the major religions of the world
Yes.
in some form. And you can find this insight that respect for others, loving your neighbor, is the key to
Yes.
being a good person and having a good life. You can find that in there, but there's so much other stuff too that any of the major religions is sort of like a big ink blot that doesn't have its own interpretation. People sort of place an interpretation on it to suit themselves.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you've seen that, as you note, in the United States, to some people, being Christian means having a rationale for your own superiority.
Yes.
And for other people, being a Christian means you have to be a servant. You have to
Right.
take care of your neighbors and so on.
Right.
And in some ways, those are opposite
Mhm.
meanings of the religion. So
Yes.
when we say we want to separate religion from education and or separate religion from the state, we're partly being wary of all of those interpretations that can be placed on religion, so that it doesn't mean the same thing to all people.
Right.
Um, we are also concerned historically by the fact that sometimes when religious authorities become all powerful
Mhm.
in the country, they can be very oppressive
Yes.
and have been. So that's a complicated range of issues, but I think the essential point that impressed you and that I think is important is that, yeah, there's this there's this connection between Christianity, if we just look at what Jesus taught, and nonviolence, the way it comes through the the work of Gandhi.
Yes.
And Gandhi had an interesting kind of a joke or a sort of an ironic saying that he was uh, let's see, he was, well, there are a couple of jokes that go together. One was he was asked what he thought of Western civilization, and he said he thought that would be a good idea. And the other comment was in relation to Christianity, that he saw an awful lot of people who called themselves Christian, uh, but they were not very much like Christ.
Right.
And that was sort of a gentle way of criticizing some of the things that you've noted about how the religion comes across in our country.
Absolutely.
So it's a complicated set of questions. And the people that I've worked with over the years have been from many different religious traditions.
Mhm.
So I've tried to learn how to teach nonviolence in a way that is broadly acceptable to people from many different backgrounds.
Yes.
And I think that in learning nonviolence, learning how to talk about it that way, in a way that's sort of, I don't know, secular or at least ecumenical, so crossing different faith traditions, I think that's important
Absolutely.
because, everything we say now gets picked up by the media.
Yes.
It gets picked up by AI learning algorithms and stuff like that. So I would like the things that I say to have some truth value to them
Right.
and not to push other people's buttons unnecessarily and make people angry or offended because I seem to have dissed their own religious faith.
Absolutely.
The amazing thing about nonviolence is that you can talk about it that way. You can
Right.
talk about it in a way that's broadly acceptable to almost anybody from any culture. And looking across the world, it seems that versions of nonviolence have cropped up when they've been needed
Hmm.
by people, trying to get their needs met.
Right.
Um, and it doesn't go away, thankfully. It keeps
Right.
cropping up.
Because at the end of the day, it's about peace, and that's what all of us want anyway.
Yeah. And peace to me is a lively thing.
Hmm.
It's like a community where people are busy and they're having fun and they're interacting with each other in positive ways. Um, I my vision of it is probably more fun than many people's vision of peace. Um, but I used to think when I was very much younger that peace meant just being left alone,
Yes.
and so that I could lie on a couch and eat potato chips by myself and not be criticized for it.
Yes.
That's not peace. Not really.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on with me and talking a little bit,
Of course. Thank you for
Sophia.
inviting me.
And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it.
I have, absolutely.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. I think
You're
we'll
welcome.
end our session, and I hope that people who listened to us enjoyed it and got something out of it.
Absolutely.